My friends, good evening to all of you. Things are getting crazy. I'm breathing blue and silver and staying on top of every development to bring you every detail. So stay tuned because something very interesting is happening inside the Detroit Lions offense. And even though everyone understands that OTA practices are not the place to make definitive conclusions, one player is beginning to generate real attention. The reason this matters is not just because of his individual development, but because of what it could mean for the entire offense and for quarterback Jared Goff moving forward. Throughout these offseason practices, one observation has stood out. Second-year wide receiver Isaac Tesla appears significantly more comfortable within Detroit's offensive system than he did at the same point a year ago. That may sound like a normal step for a young player entering his second season, but when you look deeper into what the Lions have been missing over the past several years, it starts to become much more important. Reports from OTAs highlighted how smooth Tesla looked during route running drills. More importantly, he appeared confident and natural within the structure of the offense. For a player who entered the league with obvious physical gifts but limited experience at the highest level, that kind of progress is exactly what the coaching staff wanted to see. When you examine Detroit's receiving group, the potential becomes obvious. Amon-Ra St. Brown remains one of the most reliable and productive slot receivers in football. His ability to consistently create separation and find openings in coverage has made him a foundational piece of the offense. Then there is Jameson Williams, whose development has continued to change the way defenses approach Detroit. His speed forces opponents to account for him on every snap, creating opportunities throughout the field. But there has been another element missing. For years under Dan Campbell, the Lions have searched for a consistent outside receiver capable of bringing size, strength, and physicality to the position. Detroit has had players contribute in that role. Josh Reynolds provided some valuable moments. Tim Patrick brought experience and intelligence to the offense. However, neither player fully represented the type of athletic, big-bodied outside target capable of becoming a true long-term difference maker. That is why Isaac Tesla's progress matters so much. The talent has never been the question. Even during his rookie season, flashes of his potential were impossible to ignore. He demonstrated impressive hands, excellent size, strong athletic traits, and the ability to score touchdowns, finishing his rookie campaign with 6 receiving touchdowns. The challenge was refinement. Coming into the NFL, he was still learning many of the finer details of playing wide receiver at the professional level. Now, those same conversations are changing. Instead of discussing potential, people inside the building are starting to talk about comfort. Comfort with roots. Comfort with assignments. Comfort with understanding where he needs to be within the offense. Those details often determine whether a talented athlete becomes a dependable NFL weapon, and if Tesla continues developing, the ripple effect could be enormous. More weapons create more problems for opposing defenses. When defenses focus heavily on St. Brown, Williams, Jahmyr Gibbs, and Sam Laporta, another legitimate receiving threat can completely alter how opponents distribute their attention. Suddenly, defensive coordinators are forced into difficult decisions. Double one player and another gets favorable matchups. Commit extra help deep and space opens underneath. Every new threat changes the equation. That brings the conversation directly to Jared Goff. Many observers felt Detroit's offense took a step backward in certain areas last season. The running game was not always as dominant as expected, and the offensive line faced challenges throughout the year. Yet Goff continued producing at an extremely high level. He followed his 2023 season where he threw for 4,500 yards and 30 touchdowns, with another outstanding campaign that many consider among the best years of his career. One reason for that continued success may have been the emergence of Jameson Williams. As Williams became a larger factor in the offense, defenses were forced to adjust. That opened opportunities throughout the passing game and helped create favorable situations for Goff. Now imagine adding another reliable option to that equation. If Tesla becomes the player many believe he can become, Detroit could potentially field one of the most complete receiving groups in the NFL. St. Brown provides elite reliability. Williams brings explosive speed. Tesla could offer the size and physical presence the offense has been searching for. Combine that with Gibbs, Laporta, and an improved offensive line, and suddenly the ceiling of this offense becomes incredibly high. The most intriguing part is that this discussion is no longer centered on raw talent. Everyone already knew Tesla had talent. The conversation is shifting toward readiness. And if these early OTA observations are the beginning of a true second-year leap, the Lions may have quietly unlocked an entirely new dimension within their offense. Could Isaac Tesla be the missing piece that finally gives Detroit the complete receiving trio it has been searching for under Dan Campbell? The reason this could become such a significant development for Detroit is because offenses at the highest level are often defined by options. The more answers a quarterback has before and after the snap, the more dangerous the entire unit becomes. And if Isaac Tesla truly takes the next step, Jared Goff may be entering one of the most favorable situations of his entire NFL career. Think about what opposing defenses are already forced to handle when facing the Lions. Amon-Ra St. Brown remains the security blanket. Every defense knows he is going to be heavily involved, yet he continues to find ways to get open. Jameson Williams has evolved into a player who cannot be ignored because of his ability to stretch the field. Defenses have to account for his speed on virtually every snap. Then there is Jahmyr Gibbs, who creates problems whether he is lined up in the backfield or working as a receiving threat. Add Sam Laporta into the equation, and suddenly there are already multiple players capable of demanding defensive attention. Now imagine adding a fully developed Isaac Tesla to that group. Instead of being a complementary piece still learning the offense, Tesla could become a legitimate weapon capable of winning his own matchups. That changes everything. Defenses can no longer simply focus on the established stars. Every adjustment creates another vulnerability somewhere else on the field. That is where the excitement surrounding these OTA observations comes from. Nobody is saying depth charts are being decided right now. Nobody is claiming that OTA performances automatically translate into regular season success. Even Dan Campbell has made it clear that fans should avoid reading too much into player positioning during these practices. But development matters, progress matters, comfort matters, and that is exactly what observers are noticing with Tesla. The flashes were already there during his rookie season. Lions fans saw moments where his combination of size, athleticism, and hands made him look different from many receivers on the field. The challenge was consistency. The challenge was mastering the details that separate NFL contributors from NFL stars. Now, those details appear to be improving. If Tesla can become more refined as a route runner, improve his understanding of defensive coverages, and continue developing the complete skill set required in Detroit's offense, he may become exactly the type of receiver this team has been searching for over the last several seasons. That possibility leads directly back to Jared Goff. One of the more interesting discussions surrounding Goff is how his production has continued despite various challenges around him. Even when certain areas of the offense were not operating at peak efficiency, he continued putting together highly productive seasons. His numbers remained among the best of his career, and he consistently demonstrated command of the offense. The question now becomes, what happens if the supporting cast gets even better? If St. Brown remains elite, if Williams continues ascending, if Gibbs keeps creating explosive plays, if Laporta remains a major factor, and if Tesla emerges as a dependable third receiving option, the Lions could potentially field one of the deepest offensive groups in football. At that point, discussions about Goff reaching another statistical level stop sounding unrealistic. There is already speculation about what kind of numbers he could produce with a fully healthy supporting cast and an improved offensive line. Some believe Detroit's offense could be positioned for one of its most productive seasons under Dan Campbell. The idea of Goff pushing toward career best production suddenly becomes much easier to envision when you look at the number of weapons surrounding him. And perhaps the most encouraging aspect for Lions fans is that this isn't based on a major free agent signing or a blockbuster acquisition. This is internal development. This is a young player already on the roster, potentially growing into a much larger role. Those are often the moves that elevate good teams into great teams. Championship contenders are rarely built solely through outside additions. They become stronger because players already inside the organization continue to develop and exceed expectations. That is why so much attention is being paid to Isaac Tesla right now. Nobody is crowning him. Nobody is guaranteeing future success. But there is a growing belief that the player seen during these OTA sessions looks far different from the rookie who was still learning the offense a year ago. If that growth continues through training camp and into the regular season, Detroit may have found something extremely valuable without needing to look anywhere outside its own locker room. And if that happens, the rest of the NFC could be dealing with an offense that is even more dangerous than the one they already feared. There is another reason Lions fans should pay attention to this situation, and it goes beyond individual statistics or highlight plays. What makes Detroit such a dangerous team under Dan Campbell is the way every piece of the roster is expected to contribute to the larger vision. This offense has never been built around one player carrying the entire load. It has always been about creating multiple threats and forcing defenses to make impossible choices. That philosophy is exactly why the development of Isaac Tesla could become one of the more important stories to follow throughout the year. When defenses prepare for Detroit, they already face a difficult challenge. Stop the run, and the passing game can hurt you. Focus on the passing game, and the running attack becomes more dangerous. Shade coverage toward one receiver, and another player suddenly finds himself with favorable matchups. The Lions have spent years building toward that type of balance. Now they may be reaching a point where the offense has answers for almost every defensive strategy thrown at them. Imagine a defense entering a game plan determined to slow down Amon-Ra St. Brown. That sounds reasonable until Jameson Williams starts threatening the secondary vertically. Then attention shifts toward Williams, opening opportunities elsewhere. Add Gibbs working in space and Laporta operating over the middle, and defenders are already being stretched in multiple directions. If Tesla becomes another reliable target, those defensive calculations become even more complicated. That is why observers are encouraged by reports that describe him as smoother, more comfortable, and more confident than he was a year ago. Confidence often changes everything for young players. The physical tools may get a player drafted, but confidence allows those tools to appear consistently on Sundays. Instead of thinking through every assignment, players react naturally, routes become sharper, timing improves, trust develops between quarterback and receiver. That trust is especially important for Jared Goff. One of Goff's greatest strengths has always been operating within structure. He thrives when timing, spacing, and execution are working together. The more reliable options he has available, the more efficiently he can distribute the football. And if Tesla earns that trust, Goff gains another target capable of making defenses pay for mistakes. What makes this especially intriguing is how early these observations are arriving. Training camp has not even begun. The regular season remains months away, yet people watching these practices are already noticing differences compared to last year. They are noticing a player who appears far more comfortable within the offense and far more prepared to contribute. For Detroit, that is exactly the type of development they hope to see after his rookie season. Remember, the expectations were never about immediate dominance. The Lions understood that Tesla entered the league with tremendous upside, but also areas that required refinement. Development